gentlemen, and welcome to a new installment of Trendspotting Why Things Matter, a monthly lecture series that connects the frontiers of academia, research, and thought with issues that matter to people's lives. This is in collaboration with the Hearth Advisors. May I request our panelists to take the stage, please, and I will introduce them. While they take the stage, this is our fourth installment. We do a lecture every Tuesday. We've covered issues from tech, we've covered business innovation, we've covered, today is fashion, and the topic is fashion's metamorphosis from fast to ethical. The discussion will explore alternative pathways for an industry that's struggling to decelerate. As usual, we have a very diverse panel of accomplished industry experts, and I will introduce them one by one. Amrish Kumar, CEO, MD, and Creative Director, Reliance, Ritu Kumar, with a background in banking and finance and hands-on experience in fashion retail. He has built the brand into one of the largest premium brand retail chains in the country, as well as internationally in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. In addition, his entrepreneurial spirit and love for music led to his founding an indie record label, Mummy Daddy Records, which is now an online video agency, Mummy Daddy Films. And if that were not enough, he has just returned from JLF, having debuted as an author with his fiction novel, Gods of Willow, a coming-of-age story of a young boy from Hyderabad, deeply entwined with his love for cricket. Our next panelist is Karishma Shahni Khan, founder, clothing label Kasha, and founder, Heart to Heart Movement. Karishma Shahni Khan is a Pune-based fashion designer. She graduated from the prestigious London School of Fashion, where she was awarded the Best Surface Textiles, the Nina de York Fashion Illustration, and the Fashion Graduate of the Year Award for her debut graduate spring-summer collection called Yatra. Karishma launched her label Kasha in 2011, which is inspired by Indian crafts, aesthetics, and colors. They work predominantly with Indian fabrics like cotton silk. Kasha is a mix of contemporary and Indian clothing. In her own words, is color, craft, sustainable, layered culture. Our next panelist is Ishani Bail, CEO and founder of Sustainer, a platform that connects companies, startups, and investors to the right sustainable resources. Sustainer was selected as a semi-finalist in the London Mayor's Entrepreneurs Competition in the tech category. A certified instructional designer or an e-learning designer, she did her master's in education and development with a special focus on technology at the Institute of Education, University College of London. In her work, Ishani focuses on creating immersive learning experiences and content that combine elements of technology and sustainability. Mankiran Dhillon, Head of Strategy and Content, Fashion Revolution India. With an appetite for creative initiatives, Mankiran works with brands to offer strategy-driven, unique solutions. She works cross-functionally and cross-sector with an emphasis on building brand image, widening outreach programs, generating revenue, and building successful and lasting client relationships. On another note, with the small creative practice Mere, she works with Fulkari, a needlecraft native to the land of Punjab, to revisit and reinvent the fine craft of silk floss to make functional fashion and art. Timeless pieces with an emotional and a cultural connection. Our moderator for today's evening is not Shashank Veera, but our very own Vidyun ma'am. Vidyun Singh, creative head of programs at India Habitat Center for the last 27 years. She's here wearing one of her many other hats as founder and creative head of Future Collective, an initiative to shape conscious culture and help build a community that straddles mindfulness and profitability. Along with co-founder and partner Roma Narsinghani, a sustainable jewelry designer, Future Collective has held successful design-led events, a pre-pandemic one in Delhi and a more recent one in Bombay. Both were focused on building community awareness through a combination of homegrown ethical brands, artisanal marketplaces, immersive art, films, talks, everything out of waste, workshops, swap shops, food, and music. I hope that helps you know a little bit about our panelists for today. I will now leave the stage and hand it over to Vidyun ma'am and our panelists. But before we begin, our next lecture is on 19th of March, and it's on heritage and art. Please do come for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanika. Good evening, everybody. And I'm so glad that we have some more people in the audience because, as I was telling Shashank earlier, that seeing the kind of attendance we've had in the past when we've had subjects like finance, where the hall has been spilling over, I said people probably thought fashion, what's happening to Trendspotting now? But here we are, and you may well ask, why fashion? And is fashion sustainable? Does fashion and sustainability go together? Well, the short answer is that not really and not yet. But why are we discussing fashion then? Because we have a very interesting panel, so I'm hoping that we will have a lot of different insights on it. But why we're discussing fashion at all is that, and instead of what is the pressing question on everybody's pressing issue, I would say, on everybody's mind, which is climate change, which was looming in the horizon, which was knocking on the door, and is really the most urgent issue that everybody is addressing today. And that's where fashion comes in, because fashion plays a very important part in lots of elements of it that are contributing not so nicely to the environment. And before I begin, there are some statistics that most of you may already know, but they're pretty startling. So I thought, why not kick this off by giving you some of those statistics? Because even though we know it in principle, the numbers for me were quite staggering. So here it is, for which I need to be able to look at the papers so here it is, key environmental footprint of fast fashion includes the disposal of one garbage truck full of clothes per second, with approximately 60% of materials being plastic-based. The industry releases 500,000 tons of microfibers into the ocean annually, equivalent to 50 billion plastic bottles. Currently contributing to 8 to 10% of global carbon emissions, the fashion sector's trajectory could escalate this figure to 26% by 2050. The fashion industry emits about the same quantity of greenhouse gases per year as the entire economies of France, Germany, and the United Kingdom combined. By 2030, it will need to cut its emissions by about half, or else it will exceed the 1.5-degree pathway to mitigate climate change set out by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and ratified in the 2015 Paris Agreement. Water usage, industrial wastewater pollution, human rights violations, particularly against textile workers in developing countries, further exacerbate the industry's impact. So, these are not figures that I have just gotten off news. These are figures that I have gotten off reports that have been studying the impact of fashion on the climate and on the environment. So why are we, so that's a global glance, but why are we suddenly in India so concerned about talking about fashion? Because traditionally we have been one of the most sustainable spaces, with an emphasis on our textiles, on our crafts, on our mindfulness. Have we not all always lived with hand-me-downs and upcycling, recycling, all that sun drying? I mean, you name it, and that was the kind of culture that we were. So what went wrong? What went wrong is that, well, you know what? For what went wrong, I'm going to turn to Mankiran, because she's passionate about what went wrong, and we know that it's the market that's at play. So over to you.
Thank you. I don't necessarily say this, that it's the truth, but I think what went wrong with the Indian culture is also the marketing that happens. So we are living in retail therapy world. We're living in a place where we are sold the idea that buying is going to make you feel good. If you go collectively as a family for a shopping day and therapy, it's going to make you feel good. And that kind of has become aspirational, that we need to go retail therapy, shop till you drop, the comment. So it's the 75 years of marketing that's embedded and etched into our systems now that makes us want to feel that new is good rather than swapping with a friend or sharing or mending. Visible mending has become so beautiful. but we don't really entertain it. Our mothers, our grandmothers have used one garment to the point that it became a rag in our own households, right? And to this date, if you hear their stories, and we did a couple of videos on this on Fashion Revolution India's social pages, you'll see that they were sharing stories about how three sisters shared the same sari but just got made three different blouses, and they were very happy to wear it for like a decade. They shared it, and then a daughter of one of those sisters had it. So, those generational hand me downs, the emotional connect with it, the cultural, like Fulkari. I belong to a Punjabi community, so Fulkari is so important to us. It's a family thing, it's a auspicious, it's a wedding thing. So the celebratory feel of it has been taken away from the fact that new is good, retail therapy is good. So I think we are not being sold the garments, we are being sold the idea that a new garment is going to make you feel better. But does it really?
Well, it obviously evidently does, because the industry is growing, and in a sense, which is exactly what is wrong. But she mentioned Fashion Revolution, and she works with Fashion Revolution, and I just want to draw your attention to Fashion Revolution, which is something that you should follow, because it's an initiative that I personally admire greatly, and they have been doing seminal work, flagging issues of concern for over a decade now, straight after the Rana Plaza disaster in Bangladesh. And since then, they have actually been doing great work. So that was just because you mentioned Fashion Revolution, and I wanted to actually underscore that. But if I may turn to you, Karishma, because I know that you have worked with Fashion Revolution before. And from what we just heard, as a prize-winning, award-winning, bright student from one of the world's best London colleges, you had the world as your oyster, if I may say so, when you could have been scorching the ramps with sort of high-end retail stuff. What made you choose to go the route that you did?
Okay, thank you for all those compliments. I think for me, when I was a younger child growing up in India, we always believed that you have to go outside and study in some international college, and that's very cool. And I think I also grew up with that. But when I went away is when I realized all that we had in India. So for me, literally, my 3 years there opened my eyes about the fact that there were so many things that we had here. I came back for every internship to this country. My father could not tolerate that, but I did. And it kind of made me go back inwards and look at where I came from. And I think the time there brought me back here. They were talking about sustainability a lot. This is 2010. They were talking about it a lot. Everyone was saying things about it. It made me realize that this is what we've always done back home. At home, we were always recycling, upcycling, what she was talking about. I think it was also a lot about quality products, handcraft. So I would not say that I grew up dreaming that I'll be a designer who's going to work in craft. But it so happened that along the way, I realized the value that Indian craftspeople have and the kind of work we have here. And that's what drew me back. And then I realized that if I look back upon it, growing up, I grew up in a family of freedom fighters. So they always wore khadi. Sustainability was always spoken about without using that word so much. So in fact, she did use the word sustainable in my introduction, but we don't label ourselves as come shop from us because we're sustainable. What we're saying is that we were fortunate to go and study in colleges like this. We've built on our design aesthetic. You come and buy from us because the product is beautiful, it fits into your wardrobe, and everything else with it is like a value addition that's a given. That needs to be a given. So I think this whole word of sustainable and this whole idea of it being on trend and people, greenwashing, and there's lots of things we have to unpack. I feel like I have gone away from your question entirely, but for me, it was like going away brought me back to India, to be very honest, because I knew the value of what we had here. But I never saw it when I was in it. So I think maybe that's also one thing. Like when you see it so much around you, you don't realize how powerful or important it is.
Absolutely correct. But in Kanika's defense, the fact was that there was a time which must have been the time when you began.
Yes, absolutely.
That sustainability was not a bad word.
Yes, it's become.
So I'm just saying that in the last 3 years, especially post-pandemic, everybody is greenwashing. Everybody has to have a sustainable tag.
Yeah.
The point is that what is that sustainable tag? Sustainability is, I don't think that there is any one brand that can call themselves entirely sustainable, because there are so many components that go towards making sustainable. It's not just enough saying I work in cotton or I work in khadi. There are enough arguments about working in cotton, the amount of water it takes, and about what. There's enough about if you're working with natural vegetable dyes. Dyeing itself is coming in for sort of censure, as it were. So I think that sustainability, just by being able to put one element, is a good step forward, but it doesn't make you a sustainable designer, which is where the entire sort of focus is right now. Amrish, I'm going to actually turn to you now, and I'm afraid I'm going to bowl a googly at you. No town, you will bat a downtown back to me. But considering that you head a brand, Ritu Kumar, who has been an iconic brand for everybody, and was known intrinsically for the fact that she was a craft revivalist. She did hand block printing, she worked with natural textiles, she revived an entire Zardozi village and brought Zardozi back into the marketplace the way it was meant to be, and got rid of all the glitz and nylon and polyester. So she was actually always associated as a craft-oriented brand. You today are one of the largest retailing brands. Upscaling to that, has it led to compromising on those factors which were, in a sense, the DNA of Ritu Kumar at one point? And has that in any way... No, I understand. I know what you're going to tell me, which is that you need growth, you need GDP, you need this, and you need that. So one sec. I'm quickly saying that, yes, I know all that. But what I'm asking you is that in the process, do you feel that in some way it has diluted that brand equity of Ritu Kumar?
Do you mean specifically in terms of the sustainability, or is this the equity
No,
of the brand?
I'm saying in terms of sustainability. We are focused on sustainability here.
Well, look, I think one of the things that we must acknowledge is that, like all things in India, all things are true, even if they're diametrically opposite. So even though we do have a culture of what we are calling sustainable on this panel, of the we have grown from a large lineage of being the greatest textile country in the world for hundreds of years. So the understanding, our intrinsic understanding of textile and the ability for farms to, because most textile or handloom manufacturers in India in the last few centuries were dual income. They were agricultural as well as looms and things like that, and that economy still exists. So we had an intrinsic understanding, which is what our panelists have also alluded to. At the same time, today in India, we have, say, 50 to 60 million people employed in the textile and ancillary industries, textile garmenting. Out of that, only about 5 to 10% are actually involved in what we have been talking thus far about, whether it's the cottage industry, whether it's about the sort of smaller power loom industries, and exactly the kind of thing I was just talking about, which is that dual income looms that were the bedrock of India when colonialism happened. So that's to say that 90% of India is also not sustainable intrinsically. So if you ask the journey of a brand that scaled, quite naturally, it's not going to remain cottage. If you need to go in a certain area, a certain price segment, it's not going to remain cottage. Remember, the consumer is also changing. I mean, everybody on this panel has probably a similarly common aesthetic. The new consumer that's coming to India has their own taste, their own preferences. So to cater to them, new brands have come up. We've made sub brands. So I think it's a natural corollary. Correct, thank you. Of consumerism. And yes, naturally, when you're going to start creating products for a larger consuming base, there will be a compromise on sustainability, but that's kind of a given.
Yes, I totally agree. I think it's a very, very difficult terrain if we are talking about fashion and sustainability, because it has to navigate many issues which are social, environmental, economic, all the above said. And I think that what has happened with fashion, I'm not talking about your brand, because I think that there are certain brands that are talking by keeping it in their mind's eye that there needs to be a fine balance. But in between, there is an entire market which is the fast fashion market, where clothes are actually not just, they're not only stylistically obsolete, they have that kind of let me disintegrate on you. So they will either split, or they will run color, or they will tear, or something or the other. It's the same with sort of equipment and all, so I won't go into that. But that is exactly what is fueling a very large area of the mass market, which is being made okay for the people in that segment of the garment trade. It's wonderful, because the more that happens, the more they sell, the more they produce, which is what is contributing to the fact that there is overproduction, there is wastage, there are deserts that have got mountains of landfill, there are countries to which the excess clothing is being exported to, there are oceans, rivers, all that kind of a thing that's happening. But I think it's that mid-segment which is then relying on not looking at the people and the planet, they're looking at profit. And what does that mean? That you have to make cheap, whether it is, and that's where all the polyester, the fabric, the nylon, all those that are causing the maximum harm are coming in. But that's the thing. I mean, it's not only about the high-end. It's not only about the high-end fashion, and it's not only about the craftsmen and the artisans. There is that large population in between, which is the mass market, where every house is buying saris which are like 2,000 rupees, t-shirts that are almost throwaway prices. That's where the problem is happening.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the actual issue is not what Ritu Kumar is doing, because that is a certain price point, a certain audience. It's about what is happening, what you can go out in the market and buy unbranded clothes, 50 rupees, 100 rupees, people's spending power has gone up, their purchasing power has gone up, so their disposal power has gone up. And I think that's an entire part of the system that needs to somehow change. It's not going to happen overnight. And I am not of the belief that it has to be 100% handcrafted. I am not of the belief that technology is bad. So we're not sitting here trying to make any claims that everything has to be in a certain way. But I think it's that fine line you were talking about. And I think that comes across everywhere, and that is what we have to learn somehow as a human race.
Which actually brings me, yes, it is a fact that we cannot knock technology. Technology has, in a sense, diluted some aspects of the craft quotient of design, but in a great sense, it has actually value added. Yeah. And for that, I'm going to bring Ishani into the picture, because she is the ed tech that is actually moving ahead, because I think what is really important is how to be able to combine that technology and yet be able to educate and direct our young designers, young practitioners, or old manufacturers who may have in terms of their conscience or in terms of their leaning, they may want to do things right, they may want to be sustainable, but they don't know where to begin and how to go forward. So over to you.
Thank you so much for that question. I think that it's really interesting to kind of delve deeper into this whole interdisciplinarity between sustainability, technology, and education. And I think that while I've done a lot of research in this, it's basically trying to first identify the skills gap that actually exists. And I think that's really, really dependent upon a number of different factors through which we can really look at, various kinds of upskilling programs that can help us, first of all, de-jargonize this whole concept of sustainability, because I think when we talk about it, we will create so many different kinds of definitions. Like, I remember I went to COP28, and I was just thinking to myself that, oh my God, I'm feeling really bad for the people who are going to give GRE exams, because the number of words that are going to be added to the vocabulary is going to be crazy. Um, so I think, first of all, it's really, really important for us to kind of sit down and understand what does sustainability exactly mean, especially in the fashion space, and how do you exactly de-jargonize that? And I really use that this terminology in most of my discussions. And I think that one thing that I've really found out is that it really, really needs to be relatable to oneself, one's own identity. And, I've had a lot of discussions around this about the psychology behind the consumer. How does a consumer exactly think, no matter where he or she really comes from? But the identity is so important. Like, for example, for me, the reason why I also was really interested in the concept behind sustainable fashion is simply because I found it so innovative, and plus it really, really helped me figure out what my personal style was. I mean, a lot of people go against repeating outfits, and it's not part of the norm, and you see all of these headlines coming in newspapers that X actress repeated this outfit, or this is really bad. But to me, I'm just like, why not? It's part of your own personal style. And if supposing you like wearing a certain kind of skirt, or if you like wearing a certain kind of top, and it has a particular story attached to it, what is wrong if you repeat it again and again? So I think it's kind of really, really important for us to really figure out the meaning of sustainability and how you can really identify it to one's own personal self and personal style. And I think it just becomes really interesting that ways, and that's a really great methodology of especially learning more about sustainable fashion and how to integrate it within oneself. And then you can, of course, upskill it, because when skill meets opportunity, and when you find an opportunity, then you automatically like the effect of learning and I guess the rate of learning becomes quite high. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you. Okay, that explains to us why you were drawn to sustainability in fashion. But would you share with us a little more about your platform and what it is actually doing in terms of being able to connect those who are in that chain?
Definitely. So Sustaina is a platform that I actually I mean, the concept was kind of harnessed when I was at UCL. So I was studying at the Institute of Education, which is the world's #1 platform to study about education. And there I really found out this whole idea, this whole gap that existed, which was basically that there was so much of lack of access between different stakeholders in the space of sustainability. So I was just like, hey, you know what, let me play matchmaker, and let me see how I can connect these different stakeholders. So Sustaina, in a way, is a community. It's a network. What we basically do is that we have a number of different startups in the sustainable realm, and we connect them through a model that we've created to various kinds of different stakeholders, such as investors, manufacturers, even now in the space of marketing and advertising. And we hold a number of events related in relation to the same as well. And of course, we also have an education vertical, and it's called SkillOp. And what we really focus on is kind of using the principles of circular economy in creating robust upskilling programs. And I can assure you that by kind of integrating sustainability principles, it's so interesting because we have, I think, more than 65 to 75 members, out of which there are like, I think, around 40 brands already on our platform. And when we actually built on the concept, there were like around 150 signups. Using these principles have really helped me as well, because when I would make these courses using the principles of circular economy and circularity, again, the learning retention rate would be so high. And simply because of the fact that I would really take into account things like, once somebody completes a course, what happens after that? That's very similar to how circular economy works, right? Or a circular business model works. Once somebody consumes a product, what happens after that? And that's where sustainability comes in. You can have so many different ideas and innovations around that, which can really help you innovate even further. For example, having coaching sessions to figure out how various kinds of employees can really figure out their dream career or where they want to reach in their organization, or perhaps also figuring out different kinds of communities that stakeholders can be a part of, different kinds of events that stakeholders can be a part of once a service has been delivered. And once that service has been delivered and you have a post-service kind of framework, then that builds trust. And once trust gets built in, then it creates this circle of constant engagement. And that's why I think that at the end of the day, all of these principles really come from understanding sustainability. And I think it's a great way for our economy to move forward in any industry. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm actually going to pick up something from what you were saying when you said, and I'm going to come back. I'm just giving you a break.
All right.
Because
Thank you so much.
I think, I don't know whether you were there or you were there. Or you were there. I was not there, but you did mention that you were there at COP28, which was the big thing that happened in the most recent past.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to you, Mankiran, Fashion Revolution was there at COP28, right? Fashion Revolution has been bringing to the table lots of issues that have been incorporated into the kind of strategy going forward by a lot of big designers, design production houses. So you want to just tell us a little more about some of the Fashion Revolution initiatives that have actually made an impact?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's been really interesting to hear everybody, and it's been like creating so many conversations in my own head. But I think the first thing, and because you were also asking her what sustainability is and understanding, de-jargonizing it also, there's a certain myth about sustainability that you have to buy designer garments, and then the first thought is that they're expensive. And Ursula, one of the co-founders of Fashion Revolution, has said the most sustainable garment is the one that you already own. So whatever you have right now, that's the most sustainable garment. And there are so many ways to be sustainable, which means you can still mend, you can swap. Globally, Fashion Revolution runs campaigns called Who Made My Clothes, which is about garment workers bringing more transparency in global supply chains about what happens to garment workers, which was in wake of Rana Plaza. What's in my clothes? So what really goes inside your clothes? That's another campaign. Who Made My Fabric is another thing, right? Which also brings out the farmers who are actually growing the crops. And there's so many other tribal and indigenous communities that are whose entire cycle depends on climates, right? So how there are reports that we've published in partnership with other institutions and organizations that actually talk about the impact of climate change on the craft sector, bringing that out. During COP28, I think one of the key sessions that actually Fashion Revolution India and Pakistan co-hosted was culture, craft, and community in the age of climate crisis. It was such an interesting, interactive and very hands-on session where everybody was given like a small mending kit which had some planet sign on it. It could be leaves, it could be mountains, and people were given small mending kits. So they were all stitching it while they're all talking about it, The whole idea of how our independence is actually, Khadi is a movement that came because we wanted to sway away from the idea that somebody else is producing also, consuming also. So who are we and what are we about? And that's how Khadi movement was born. So it's a sign of slow fashion is also a sign of revolution. So if you are choosing to not buy something new, if you are choosing to mend, that's actually a sign of revolution. If you're repairing, Ursula also says it's a sign of revolution. So alternative, these haul videos, shopping haul videos that go around. So globally, Fashion Revolution also has another campaign called Alternative, which is 7 to 8 ways, I think, of how you can actually use what you have without going to buy something new. And it obviously says that, there's a hierarchy. So if you have to, then you should. But at least question few things before you go and buy.
So, yeah, I totally agree with you. But looking at the flip side of it, if everybody only began to wear what they owned or cut down on, I totally agree that you need to cut down on unnecessary consumption.
Correct.
But there is an entire market out there. There are people whose livelihoods depend on it.
Absolutely.
And there are people, I mean, okay, starting with Fashion Revolution, sort of drawing attention to the Rana Plaza disaster and the fact that the bad living conditions, poor wages of people who are working in what are called the sweatshops. But there was, if I'm not mistaken, a report which actually evaluated that if those who are working in these so-called meagerly paid sweatshops are still living below what is the poverty threshold of the nation to which they belong. So I'm saying that it is all very romantic and very idealistic to talk about mending the earth by mending your clothes. But I'm going to ask Amrish to come in with something because he's been quiet for a long time and is the number cruncher on this table as far as I know. If he can throw some opinion on this.
I'm not a number cruncher, but I think one thing that's coming out from both what Ishani said as well as Mankiran is the problem has to start with the consumer. The preferences of what the world wants to buy is the eternal elephant in the room, and after that it is a regulatory problem, because no matter how altruistic we want to be, we are still capitalist consuming pieces of organic being, and we need Big Brother from time to time to tell us what to do. But there needs to be, whether it's in labor rights or it's in the amount of plastics that ought to get produced in a particular economy, etc. But what makes it extremely complicated is that it is a global supply chain. Most of what is made in poorer countries gets sold in richer countries. When everybody gets around a table, when an idea is mooted to do something, obviously the flip side, the poorer countries put their hands up and say, no, but we've got, in India, I think 10 to 12% of our labor force is in some way connected to the textile industry. And as I said, a bulk of that is not making the kinds of things that, you're speaking of, or of what our grandmothers made. So it is an extremely complicated puzzle to solve. But we don't have a choice. If we don't do something now, I think fashion is the third largest polluter in the world. As far as industries are concerned, after oil and agriculture. So both agriculture and fashion, there's a day of reckoning coming. And the one thing I will say that, fortunately, with the background that I've had and I don't know if you guys have noticed, I'm the only man on this panel.
That's why you were introduced first. I don't know if you noticed.
So the one thing that I've had to learn, and it's not been as intuitive to me, is the idea of or the ethos or the philosophy of Indian textile. And what these ladies are speaking of is something I've had to learn in terms of the passing on of that ethos. And I do think in India we are perhaps culturally in a reasonably good position to start making those changes. But again, the issue comes down to the worker in Surat who is just about making wage to feed his.
Absolutely. And I think, again, I'm just, obviously you can see I'm a fan of Fashion Revolution, but I do think that they have made some very, very intelligent and important, taken some very intelligent and important steps. And what you were talking about as who made my clothes is important for the simple reason that there was a point in time where, suppose I'm a big brand, I didn't even know in the supply chain where that product actually had traveled and come. And this point came out when apparently in the debris of the Rana Plaza disaster, there were labels found of, I can't remember exactly which big company. And when they were asked, they said, but we don't even do anything out of Bangladesh, because they were not even aware that in the process of their supply chain, there was outsourcing that was going on. So I'm saying the fact that you need to, and I'm coming back to the most important thing that we need to understand, is that if as a consumer we start paying a little more attention to that, it will actually make that supply chain and those who are in the supply chain more accountable. I'm coming back to you, Ishani, because you mentioned COP28, and there were, I mean, you were there, and I'm really curious to know, because there were lots of new directions and new decisions, and yes, there were a lot of acronyms that even I can't recall, but there was a whole bunch of new directives. There were countries, if I remember correctly, I think Italy had taken a stand that they were going to sort of enforce a whole new set of filters for people who were either producing or selling fashion in that country. There was this whole debate about how that's a global debate about how we need to sort of, stop fossil fuel production. The fact is that there is also the other side, that for countries that are dependent on that, if they don't have renewable energy options, then how are they going to be able to upscale and make a commitment to zero emission and this and that? So I believe there are somebody who's actually at COP28 has said that they'll put up a renewable energy plant, offshore plant in Bangladesh. So there are initiatives where there is, so the point I'm trying to make is that to some extent you think, oh, yet another conference, yet another lot of things, but there does seem to be some kind of global coming together where I think partners have begun to understand that in order, so I think the 1.5 target is scaring the hell out of everybody, and we can already feel that the climate change is impacting us and what they are projecting if we don't act really fast. So I think that even those who sat back and were complacent about the fact that, oh, it doesn't affect us, are realizing that it is affecting. And since fashion is such a in-your-face culprit that is contributing to this, which is why the fashion industry is coming up with solutions, collaborations, help, money to be able to make that entire process more transparent and accountable. Stella McCartney, who has been one of the pioneers on this, has got an entire bunch of designers, producers working on alternative fabrics. People are coming up with sort of plant-based fabrics, vegan leather. There's all kinds of things. It's all work in progress. I mean, you have things like I think it's called Econile, which is supposed to be an alternative for the fact that you do need polyester, you do need all that in fashion. But even they have been called out saying that, no, guess what? Even when your garment is washed, it is letting out something called microfibers. And they're like, hello, but we're trying to get there. So now that we know that it's releasing microfibers, now we will see how not to release microfibers, but that is like R&D in progress. So I think that at the end of the day, what we are looking at is, in the last post-pandemic years, there has been a lot more coming together of collaboration, which I think is the key. But ultimately, I think the bottom line is educating the customer, which is you and I, because unless we actually say no or know what we are buying or decide that this is the way we are going to go, if you are supplying to me and if I'm not buying, then what are you going to do? You're going to have to change. So yes, we do need, I know that money is coming in, there are all those little loopholes where corruption will set in, this will happen, money will get diverted, whatever, but legislation, more transparency, better collaboration, and at the end of it, if you and I begin to actually be more mindful, which seems to be a good way to be, we could actually be more sustainable and force fashion to be more sustainable. Yeah. Anybody who wants to ask anybody else? Oh, sorry, one thing.
Yeah.
That's why I said COP28, and then I went on waffling about this, that, and the other. But there were like lots of new decisions
Yes.
that were taken. But what I remember thinking that, this is interesting, is that when the whole world was talking about phasing out fossil fuels and all, it seems that the president of COP28 says, what are you talking
Something
about, you
different.
know? And there's no scientific data to prove that fossil fuels are bad for climate change. And apparently there was like a whole media sort of, thing, and there were Vogue carried this girl wearing
Protests,
oil
yes.
slicks on her and said, we are living or wearing oil or something. So just give us some little insights from
So
your
yes,
experience.
definitely. So COP28, I think that was not only the issue at hand. There were a number of challenges that went down at the conference. And I think it was not only focusing, of course, I am all in for the 17th SDG goal, which is partnerships and coming together and collaboration and all of that. But, collaboration, how to exactly go about it, there's a huge element of execution and action that's involved as well. So if it's just, coming together and having talks, that's actually brilliant. But especially what happens after that was also a challenge that I think all stakeholders face. Like, I think you talked about the legal aspects and kind of coming down in terms of how different countries can really collaborate on this stance, and figuring out what kind of authorities need to be involved in this. How would the timelines actually come about exactly, especially executing such initiatives, whether it's building more transparency in the supply chain, and then also figuring out how much budget, how much investment needs to be allotted to let's say per industry, per category, in for a particular industry to become even more sustainable. That was also a challenge. And I think that, first of all, I do understand that there can be a number of different kinds of debates that can go about that were taking place. But then at the same time, I would also really think about the fact that it's completely all right to have these debates, because if we don't have these debates and discussions, we won't be able to take action, at all. So while the protests were taking place, and I think that there were a lot of controversies, that were surrounding all of that, which I think if I speak, I would speak for probably an hour about it, so I'm not going to do that. But I think the crux of the matter is that we all need to really figure out a very robust execution strategy in terms of how we're actually going to take action, which of course really boils down to the numbers and the investments and the amount of budget we're actually allocating per industry as well. So that was one of, a great topic of discussion. Another topic of discussion was also focusing on what is going to be the correct ratio between the E, S, and G elements and aspects of around the circular economy, which is the environmental aspect, the social aspect, and the governance aspect. So one thing that I definitely observed was that there was a lot of discussion around how much proportion should be devoted to per aspect. And that really, really makes me think about the fact that how the definition of sustainability can also get misinterpreted. Like, for example, I know I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm just like, oh, so you work in sustainability. Oh, so basically you work in climate, right? So, okay, so you're just doing the environmental bit. And I'm just like, no, I mean, there are other aspects. There's a social aspect, there's a governance aspect, there's an economical aspect, there can also be a psychological aspect. And of course, now technology is also coming into the picture. If you look at AI and immersive technologies as well, that is also a challenge as well, because we also need to see how much energy is being utilized to create that. And then there's a different kind of counter argument, which is very interesting, where people are just like, hey, but AI is actually reducing the time in terms of utilizing or completing a task. So isn't that actually reducing the energy in a way? So, I mean, these are all interesting debates that I'm highlighting over here. I don't have a particular answer, because I think that would require a lot of research, but that's something that I could make out of the conference.
That's fair enough. I don't think anybody has the answers. I wish we did. But, talking about the fact that when we are talking about legislation and the important, that the only way to be able to move forward fast enough is going to be if there is not just aspiration, but there is legislation. So, Amrish, what I want to know is that how feasible is, I mean, tomorrow suppose that there is a legislation that actually imposes a fine on you for selling something in the market without having actually vetted right through the process. So if there is a sustainability fine, as it were, how would you deal with it, and what would it entail in terms of the system as it exists today, and what are the aspects that you think would change in the process?
No, I don't think it's that complicated. I think there's many things you can do. There are many the regulations on public goods that are not good for you, like cigarettes, for example. So I think there are many things that can be done. But what tends to also work very well is, rather than the stick, you look at the carrot and you incentivize. So you promote, or you create subsidies, or you have lower barriers of trade for particular good activities, and then you tax the ones that are not as good. I mean, but I don't think it's in the supply chain. I don't think it's that complicated, because there's some easy ones, because a lot of what happens in fashion is materiality. So that is an easy one to segment. In things like livestock, etc., it's a little more complicated.
Yeah.
But in fashion, it can be made easier. But I think incentives are very, very important. Government funds, there are funds already that exist, but things that when capital is devoted to good behavior, I think it can make a difference.
Right. So I think that have we actually been chattering for 1 hour? Yes, we have. So no, I think that, yes, I think what's, speaking for myself, I think what's coming out of this is that it is not, it is a complicated terrain that we have to navigate, but it is not impossible. And from the manufacturing, from the design, from the education, and from the activism front, if everybody was to actually work towards the same common goal, I think we can get there sooner rather than later. So can I now open, if it's okay with all of you, can I open the floor for any questions or any further information that anybody may want out of any of you? Yes.
Thank you for the nice discussion. Actually, I'm not getting the name of the first panelist.
Ishani.
Ishani. Yeah.
Ishani Behel, yeah.
Ishani, yeah, so she said that a person can. Sorry. Okay. So Ishani said that a person can repeat the outfit, there is no issue with that. But actually, a lot of times, from time to time, it comes in the media that suppose one particular celebrity in Hollywood, some particular Hollywood celebrity has sported some particular outfit in, say, Academy Awards 2015, and now the same outfit has been copied or repeated by some Indian Bollywood celebrity in like Filmfare Award 2022. And it comes up in the media, and they show the two persons sporting the outfit, and they make a, fuss or issue out of it. So, there is no, as such, there is no copyright or IPR, or intellectual property right involved. Once the outfit is publicly, worn or sported, so it can be repeated by another celebrity in another country at another event. So, the page 3 people, they make a fuss out of it in the media. And so many, media channels are there, networks are there, social media, whatever. So they comment, or they just gossip about it. So what do you feel about the same? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. So I think there are two aspects to it. I would like to address the difference between repeating something and also the whole idea of plagiarism, which was coming into account, which is very important. So something that's been plagiarized where perhaps a particular artist or even an individual or somebody would be like, oh yeah, I'm wearing this outfit, but it's mine and it's not, and I bought it from somewhere without realizing that it's been, it's been kind of copied in a way, but that basically means that there needs to be some form of citation given to the artist, the one who actually designed the product, which I'm completely, I definitely support that. The thing I'm against is that this whole idea that if supposing I'm wearing, let's say, a top from one of my favorite clothing labels, let's say Kasha, and if supposing I wear that on Monday, and if supposing I want to wear it on Wednesday, and let's suppose in a very hypothetical world out there, I'm a world famous actress, and then people gossip about that, then I'm just like, why would you? Because the thing is that if supposing that piece of clothing is making me feel confident about myself, if I wear it on Monday, if I wear it on Wednesday, or if I wear it on Friday, that's completely all right, because I think that there's a particular story attached to it, and it defines my style, and when I go into meetings, it makes me feel really confident about myself. So I think it's this whole idea of this is why I believe that I completely support Mankiran on this whole idea of fashion revolution, because it is a revolution that I'm creating for my own identity, where I'm wearing clothes that I love, and I'm wearing clothes that make me feel more confident. So if I'm repeating it, what's wrong with that?
Can I add something?
I think that it'll be interesting from. Correct. So I think.
Yeah. You want to continue? I'll do it after you.
No, I agree with you. Like, I think inspired is completely all right, as long as you know who you're getting inspired by, and the individual. And,
Yeah, so your question actually has two different parts of it. So in terms of repeating, I just like to say one thing. Fashion, when you started also you said it, it's viewed as a very frivolous industry. But if you forget, in your wardrobe or how you dress every single day talks so much about where you're going and what you're trying to achieve that day. So when you're talking about this, what she's saying, like why should we not be allowed to, I think it really comes down to psychology and the way society has stereotyped women, men, everything. So I think that really we need to break that, the way we judge people and we talk about them and how we perceive beauty and all those standards. So I think that is another situation we deal with. But when it comes to what you're saying about like imitation and things like that, I think there are certain laws that have come into place, and I think actually Ritu Kumar's company just did something, right? I mean, you all have been doing something for quite some time to safeguard your designs. And there was an article yesterday in Voice of Fashion which I read. So maybe he can give you more insight on it, but it's obviously not okay. It's absolutely not okay. And I think like we keep talking about all these things, materiality, social, economical, everything, but it comes down to also design, the design process or how people are developing a product or how they're getting to it. Like it's not just saying, oh, I like this fabric, I'm going to make it. So I think even the design rights need to be protected. And I think there have been strides to do that. So I think it's okay to repeat your clothes if it's your product, but it's not okay to imitate another designer's product and sell it as your own or to rip that off. So there are two different conversations for me.
But just a small point, but it is said that imitation is the best form of.
No, I agree. No, I agree with that. So the thing is, a smaller brand like myself, I can't do anything about it. So there are people who imitate the brand, right? And I say that and I laugh and I move on because my job is also to be on top of it and do the next best thing that I can possibly do. But it's not always that, because it also dents your business. It dents the brand value. You're working so hard to build all those things and it's not easy. So it may be flattery to some point, but not when it's killing your business. It can't be okay.
So, I mean, there is no end to, if we are talking about fashion and plagiarization and all that, it's full of stories which are lovely and which are interesting. But since you brought that up, I'm going to give it over to Amrish, because they actually have fought, the label has fought a battle for years precisely on this, and they were the early people who tried to stem because there was a long time before social media became sort of consumed by the world at the same time, that people got away with it because what you couldn't see, you couldn't sort of point out. And then this used to be, oh, that was just my inspiration. So that worked for a long time, but after that, then it was called out, and I think Ritu Kumar as a label was one of the first people who tried to do a patenting of design. So Amrish, you want to just tell us a little more on that?
Sure, but I think the question was a little different. The question was, no, I think the question was, if I'm not wrong, if not mistaken, it was that the media attitudes to somebody who repeats a particular outfit creates a disincentive to do that. That was your main
one part.
thrust.
That was
I
the
think
first
it was-
part, and then there was the second.
I think it was like a play on repeating. So are you
Complex question.
are you talking about repeating as in repeating outfits or imitating outfits? So those are two different things.
Getting inspired. Sometimes they say ki, that particular, originally it was spoken by a particular celebrity at a particular event and designed by that particular designer.
Yeah.
And later on, 5 years down the line, it was repeated at some other event in some other country by some other celebrity. Maybe it was not attributed to that original. It was just, because the person didn't know. It was just a coincidence. It was maybe it was just a matter of coincidence. It was not, done intentionally. So it is not known whether it was done intentionally or unintentionally. So I just got this my query, and not just to the media.
Everyone got very frazzled.
About the issue. From the celebrity fashion designer, from 360 degree angle, from the 360 degrees angle.
Okay. I think we have another question waiting in the wings. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm a climate scientist, and I'm very happy today to have come and listen to this conversation. You guys in fashion talking about ethics. We've just come from a long discussion all day on ethics with the AI, because we are AI people. We usually, we work with the United Nations and the IPCC reports. Prime Minister Modi went and said at COP26 that 2070 tak India will become carbon net zero. As scientists, we know that is not possible for India to do, being the third largest emitter that we are in the world. But sticking to fashion, now, at least 7 years ago, I don't know when it was, that we first, usually our worlds don't intersect, the fashion people and we. It's great that you've talked about sustainability today. Usually the worlds don't intersect, and the first time I read anything about it was when Walmart became scandalized across the world, 2015, 2016 sometime, when their Asian outsourcing, exploitation of Asian countries. And that was the first time I realized कि जो कपड़े सस्ते मिलते हैं, it doesn't mean कि वो सस्ता है तो वो अच्छा है, because some other person is being completely fleeced to make that piece of cloth cheap for me, and Walmart has been doing it and running the show. At that time, for me, at least 7 or 8 years ago, was the decision I made that I would not buy cheap stuff, because I don't know where it's coming from. The theme you guys discussed about knowing the root from which something comes to us, a piece of clothing, a piece of anything we hold on to. I wonder now, being on this table today, you're now discussing about minimalism, about buying cheap, but I still believe that buying brands, which I'm willing to pay that extra amount of money just because I know this probably, Ritu Kumar probably is not fleecing someone or exploiting someone to bring that piece of cloth to me. And so for that extra assurance, without having to read and do research, I know that spending that extra bit is going to be good for me. So on that angle, I'm very much with you that ethical would also mean buying expensive clothes. But on the angle of being minimalistic, I'm a bit concerned. So my question to you, particularly to Kasha, is that I've been stalking you last 20 minutes on Twitter. Your self-defined term that you have for yourself on Twitter, at least, Pasha, right, was a compulsive collector. If you're a compulsive collector, you cannot tell others to be minimalistic and not to buy. And Ishani, question to you is, it's all right to say that, I want to buy, I want to wear the same thing on Monday and Wednesday. What if I'm an actress? The fact that you're an actress and a role model also comes with certain responsibilities to be in that position. And if that means you have to put yourself behind and your preferences behind, that's absolutely part of the deal. You chose to be a celebrity. You chose to be an actress, you cannot be seen to be wearing the same thing 2 days because, yes, other people are probably holding you on and watching you what you wear, and therefore they want to do that too. Let them have that freedom because you're a role model. So I believe that these questions, being able to say, oh, I get to put myself first. I want to wear this every day, every morning, and even though that doesn't work if you're a role model.
But I don't think that even works
But
in regular life.
questions-
People still judge you even if it's just you and me.
But since both you and
2 questions to both. Sorry, too
questions
long.
you can
Yeah.
answer on your own,
Peter?
but I just want to say that in terms of being a role model, I think that's exactly the kind of role model one should be looking at, who is an actor who says that I am happy to wear my clothes thrice over in a week, so neither should you be hesitating.
And I
There are
think-
people who are doing that. There are people who are doing that, who are making that statement, because if I am something that, when I'm saying I mean if that person is somebody that is an aspiration that somebody else is aspiring for, then the statement that they make as that role model is more important than all the talk and chat that we can do about it. However, you had addressed
So
your questions to
I
this.
have a
let them
burning
answer.
desire to respond to my question. So you said Twitter. I haven't used Twitter in 10 years. Also, when you say compulsive collector, what do you think I'm collecting?
It's written compulsive collector, fashion, item, or some fashion.
No, it can't even be. Compulsive, I am the person in my house that collects everything from everyone in the house. So I have heirlooms, I have furniture from the entire family, I have books, and I don't think I buy any of this stuff. So I feel it's hand-me-down. So I guess I have to also think about how you put things out, right? And this is 10 years ago, and I haven't opened Twitter after, so I'm going to go back and delete that account anyways. But it's strange that you would assume that I compulsively collect only new things, because I don't.
I think
You know
you
what I
should
mean?
just alter that I'm a compulsive hoarder.
I am
which
a
is
hoarder.
what-
No, but no collector. No. But I think collectors also the same thing. It's still collecting.
But I'm saying when you put it out there that
Yeah.
I'm a hoarder,
Yeah.
we all are, so we know what you're talking
No,
about.
but
You're saying, "Oh,
but that's what
gosh."
it is. So it's quite interesting for someone to.
Yeah, no, I'm
ask me
kidding,
that.
but it's true, yeah.
Yeah, but I would also like you to think of collecting other things and not just new things. Maybe that's a new perspective. You need to change it.
Yeah, thank you for your question. But I think I am kind of really looking at this from the point of view of personal style and how people really perceive personal style as well. So I think, this was kind of a response to the question in terms of what was being asked, right? So I was kind of putting myself in those kind of shoes. But like you said, I think there are a number of people who are already doing something like this where they really own. I don't know if you are aware of this, but I think Steve Jobs always used to wear a black shirt every single day. Yeah, but I mean, he was role model, wasn't he? And he owned what he was wearing, right? And if supposing he's wearing that every single day and he's owning what he's wearing and he's saying that, okay, this is this shirt that I've really bought from this particular place and this is why I really like it. What's wrong with that? I mean, I think that's a great thing. And if there are some people who are proud of certain pieces of certain items of clothing that they're wearing and they know where it's from and they sometimes boast about it as well. What is wrong with that? And I think that we need to start accepting that. And I think, like you said, there are so many people who do that as well today.
I have to quickly pitch in something because I'm going to die inside. Otherwise, you just said to Kasha, you just said to Kasha, you're on stage because you had a certain aspect of her being that role model, but you before that said role models mean that they have to do that, which is absolutely, first of all, countering each other. And the second point is, Spider-Man has told all of us that with great power comes great responsibility. So if the role of my celebrities is to show me that they're wearing rented clothes or borrowed clothes, which by the way they return tip-top condition, they have to, otherwise they pay for it, they don't buy those clothes. So they have to return those clothes. So if my celebrity role model is that, then I think there's something wrong with my psychological thinking of what really role models mean. Yeah.
I really don't think that I am pretty sure about that my question or queries fit into the discussion of the whole thing. But if I just take the keywords of sustainable development or sustainable fashion, economics and textile or fashion, I like to ask few things. Firstly, let me introduce myself. I am a type of a person who wish to recycle everything. But for clothes, I was always wondering where to dispose it of. You can't throw into dustbin. You can't keep it aside in your wardrobe for years to come. So what we used to do, simply throw it off, and gradually over time it just disappears into some landfill or somewhere. Sometimes if you are traveling to a particular city and you don't have your own primary clothes that you are wearing, we buy the cheap clothes for a time being. And these cheap clothes are not just like that they'll be disposed of within 6 months or 3 months. They can also run for 3 years. I mean that you can figure out, buying a shirt for 2,000 rupees and buying a shirt for 200 rupees can get you over the same time frame of around 6 months at least. So how can you address this thing, the low cost economics? Because people are not certainly in the mindset that this is sustainable and I'm going to buy this because this is sustainable for 2,000 rupees. This is not sustainable, I'm not going to buy for 200 rupees. In India, people are not earning that much. The second thing is that if we say that you are going to make a sort of a, let me start with an example. For making these bulbs in 18th century, the big companies came up with a sort of a monopoly that we will not be manufacturing bulbs that will have a lifespan of some say 1,800 hours or 200,000 hours or something like that. But still, because they were in the fear that the companies might collapse because these bulbs will not be fused and the companies might be collapsed. But if we see in the current state, we have the same market, we have the same people, but consuming LEDs, they have a more lifespan than those bulbs, and we have the different brands in the market today. My question here is that if you reduce the cost and try for the sustainability, why are we fearing that the brands may disappear? Why are we fearing that the brands may go bankrupt over things like going cheaper? It has two dimensions, sustainability and economics.
Go for it. Yeah, I think to your first question, we sort of addressed that by saying that, no, I accept there are market forces. Consumers are going to try and get the best value for their money. I mean, that's a given. But because our climate is suffering, it has to be a two-part solution to it. One is got to be regulatory, because there is somebody who's got to be able to control excess of something that is not good for you. I allude to my cigarettes example again. And there has to be a change in consumer perception of what is right, what is the right thing to do. These two things have got to go hand in hand. So at the end of the day, there will be an incentive for a consumer or for a producer to price something sustainable at a lower price so it's easier to buy. And there's got to be consumers who want to buy the right thing. So that's the answer to your first question. I believe it's a two-part thing. What was the second?
This is not an answer to your question, but a comment on something that you mentioned, that I hope by now you know what to do with clothes that you want to discard. Because just don't throw them on the side so that they go into a landfill. Because even though there are small efforts that are being made, in this country at least, there is enough that is being done with clothes, which there are places that you can send them to, there are places that will collect them from you. So nothing is wasted entirely. Though having said that, that is also, nothing is entirely true and nothing is entirely the same. So there are options available for that.
So I think as a consumer, you also have some responsibility to find those options. I think it's very important. Like Swatch, like there's that, which is the one they do, the Goon, just so many, which are not even fashion related. They're taking your product, making something else out of it, and really you will have to find those options. Like I can talk for our brand, I'm just going to put this in really quickly. So we actually have a section on our website where you can bring your old saris. They're not related to us. We have design templates there. We can make a product for you. We're working in the space we understand, right? If you have leftover stuff, we had a really lovely client who came. Her mom passed away. They had lots and lots of old, and she was a textile hoarder, collector, okay? And she had lots of stuff with her, and it was very emotional. So she sent us the entire lot, and she was getting married, so we made products out of it. Now, we're working within our space, right? We, as a brand, again, we recycle, repair. You buy a product from us, you can come back to me all the time. I'll keep mending your product for you. I'll upcycle it into a new product. So the point is, it is now a two-way thing. So would you buy from me because I give you that much value? Or would you buy from, so now it comes down to you as a consumer. I'm offering you this value, but there is a price to pay because I pay everyone very fairly. My fabrics are hand-woven, they are crafted in a certain place. It's touched by many people, not just one person. So I guess that's something you need to think about also.
That works perfectly fine for recycling part.
Yeah.
But for economics part, if we say that you are going to recycle a particular shirt and the recycling itself takes suppose 350 rupees,
Right.
and I can buy a slightly less quality shirt in say 200 rupees.
Yeah.
So it becomes a consumer mentality what you want to go for. Okay, that I understand, and I'll be more responsible. Like if it is a consideration of 50% or more, okay, that works fine. But sometimes what there is a beautiful documentary on DW documentary. It talks about white labeling thing. Most of the big brands, what they do, they outsource it. You make for us, and we will sell it for higher price. And these same things are sold at the original price, but the original sellers, or there is some sort of back-channeled outsourcing to the market. So how can you say that this thing is sold by a big brand and therefore it is more sustainable than this original product that came from the back door?
No, we're not saying that.
No one is saying
We're not saying that at all. We didn't mention that at all. We're saying sustainability comes down to process and how it's made, right? Whether you're a big brand, small brand, you could be a damn big brand, you're buying a product for 2 lakhs, doesn't mean it's sustainable. It could still be anything after that. So that's what we were talking about. We were basically saying that how a product is made, transparency that Mankiran is talking about, those are really important elements to understand. Like for example, if it's being made outside, you know where it's being made, you know what material is being used. And that's what we need to address. And sustainability is not just one thing. And I cannot stress on it enough. It's not just about natural dye. It's not just about cotton. It's about how you're treating your people. Are they working in a place as nice as your store looks? Are their families being educated? It's a really large, it's a very big, it is a lot of different things. So it's not about big brand, small brand at all.
It's also a marathon, not a sprint. So we have to realize that everybody has to do at least one thing, not 20 things at the same time. So even if you're taking and trying to make one conscious step, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, but we need to take many conscious steps very soon, because one step at a time is going to probably not be enough. Basic thing is, I think, are there any more questions?
There are 3 more
Oh, there are.
questions.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Hi, my name is Abhishek. I'm founder of the Switch Fix. We are a sustainable personal care brand. So my question is for Karishma, you. And this question takes certain assumptions as well. So I feel, first of all, it may not be fair for customers in the mass segment to really look at every aspect before they buy, because they've got 20 more other things, more important things to do in their lives. Then if we move to, let's say, talking about sustainability or ethical practices, we probably are talking to a very narrow set of audiences, right? At the same time, I don't see any immediate government intervention coming in, because Amrish rightly said there are so many people involved that you have to do like a lot of changes, right? So my question then really is that, the moment you start, let's say, including sustainable or ethical elements in your production, your unit economics goes for a toss, right? So for a new founder or for a new startup, would you suggest them to weave sustainability and ethical practices? Does it make any sense at this point?
I mean, listen, that's what I started off saying. I think it's really the value that it should be a given now. We have to care about people. We have to care about the environment. It's not an option anymore. You want to talk about it, you can talk about it. You don't want to, you don't talk about it. But I think we just have to be better people to make better products. And really, that's where I'm at. I cannot give you an answer and tell you, it is hard. It's not easy, of course, because it's a personal choice. I'm not saying it's the right choice. I mean, we are saying it's the right choice, but for you, it may not be the right choice. But that's now your value system and how you want to perceive it, right? It's much easier to make products in different ways from what we probably do, but I would not choose it any other way. So I'm not saying that I am suggesting you do it. I'm saying that actually we just should be doing it now. I think it's high time in a small way. I mean, I'm not even claiming to be 100% sustainable. I can't be. I'm shipping products worldwide every single day. So my carbon emission is not very good, right? Am I finding ways to counter it? Yes, I am. But I know I can't combat it entirely. But at the same time, I'm doing everything I possibly can. I'm based in Pune. It's not a manufacturing sensitive city at all. So for me, I have to ship a lot of things. So as a part of our design process, we started creating processes and skilling people around us to create artisanal products. So we're technically new craft, right? We're not going to a Kutch or a Rajasthan to sit and do craft there, because going up and down is not a joke. So we're creating that here. So we're working with people who come to us, would come as a domestic worker to clean the office, and then she would kind of work her way up, learn. Now she heads up finishing and quality. And we've got many such stories like that. So I really think it's about personal preferences, and you just want to ensure that your product is not causing harm to anyone, not the environment, not to the person next to you, not to yourself. And you decide what are your low-hanging fruit, what are the challenges you can take on, and what are the big wars you need to have in your vision to keep fighting along the way. That's basically. Of course, you can't do anything. If you don't have the money, you can't do anything. You know, you need to make money to even help other people, right? But it can't be the cost of someone else, that's all. Yeah.
So he's giving you the mic.
Thank you. Thanks for a great panel. So I was interested about where you as people in the industry can get your knowledge from, because it seems that, like, obviously it's not your job to figure out, you know, it's very, there's so many difficult problems to figure out. But I'm thinking about the specific one of climate change. So at the beginning it was mentioned that carbon emissions are 8 to 10% from fashion. So is there any kind of institutional group that's doing this modelling of the pathways forwards for fashion? Is the government doing it? Are labour groups doing it? Are NGOs doing it? Academics? Because someone should be doing it, yeah? They need to sit down and model those numbers. We need that. Well, the reality is that, you know, there is a mass market, and it's the mass market is the one where surely all the energy is being spent. So, yeah, I'm just wondering, like, where you get your knowledge from. Does anyone do that work for you?
Google does it for me usually. There's a lot out there. A lot of people are doing it.
A lot of it is out there, but also I wanted to just say that, I mean, I'm going to have to refer to my one sheet because I'm very bad with all these things. It's because I was just saying that the number of platforms that came together at COP28, which were climate change focused on fashion, out of that is coming direction, partnerships, collaborations, reports, international sharing of data with emphasis on the developing countries, with emphasis on India, on Bangladesh, on the landfills in Chile, on, you know, so there is a lot of that information that is available to a person who wants it.
But I would just like to add that Fashion Revolution has a global transparency index called the Fashion Transparency Index, where brands actually themselves, all the fast fashion brands that I don't want to particularly name, they actually become part of that index each year in different countries. So it's done globally, USA, Brazil, especially the North American and the Latin countries. They do it very widely, and we're also going to be launching in India. So that gives us a lot of information on kind of what are they doing for accountability for their garment workers, for their carbon emissions. So one of the fast fashion brands ranks right at the top of being transparent of whatever they're doing at it.
What more?
I would like to ask a question to Mr. Amrish Kumar. In this fashion world, what are the most challenging things are you facing now, whether it is new design or material or customer satisfaction? You are running you are managing Indian textiles a decades of.
Everything is challenging, my friend.
Mostly, that's what I mentioned, whether it is design or materials or customer satisfaction.
You know, it depends. I mean, it's like running a business. There are many difficult things. I think running a retail business in India has its own set of challenges, but I can't pinpoint one for you. There are. I mean, it's the usual stuff. Are you making the right product for the right customer? Are you doing it at the right price? And are you effectively delivering it? That's just like any business. I think what we have a benefit of in India is that we have a large pool of talent to produce our product, which is interesting. And we also have a very large pool of consumers for our product. And the one thing unique about India is that it has its own identity and DNA. The one thing that we haven't touched upon, I suppose is not for this panel, is that we have our own unique taste, especially in the women wear segment of the market, where I can't imagine another country with a market that has its own unique identity and heritage, which is very difficult for external brands to come in, and also conversely, it's not as easy for us to go out. But anyway, it's a unique proposition to India. I'm sorry I didn't answer your question fully, but it'll take much longer, and I don't think we have.
one more?
I have one small
Oh,
question,
you
if I may. Okay. This is to Mr. Amrish Kumar. It's the elephant in the room, the bridal industry. So just one quick query though. This is related to plagiarism, but also what is the relationship of a large brand to a bridal replica in the market? So what is the relationship of a Manish Malhotra lehenga in Lajpat Nagar? That's just my question. How do they understand it? And how are they going to, what do they do about it?
Yeah. You know, the other day I was in Hyderabad, and a friend of mine and I went to the old city to eat kebabs, ostensibly. And it's a bustling old city, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm sure those the merchants there have been passed on from generation to generation. They've probably been doing it for 300-400 years, and it's a lot of fun. We went for the kebabs, but then we stumbled into one alleyway that was pretty much, one was making hijabs, and the other was making bridal wear. I kid you not, there was this one thing in the window which was so shiny that we had to, take eyes off it. We couldn't look at it directly, and it was 4,000 rupees. Now, I don't know what you're looking at in terms of the relation, but there is a lot of inspiration that comes from, for example, the film industry. There's a lot now inspiration that comes from the fashion industry, because these pictures of what's going on the ramp is always been there. But can I just say the original imitators have always been ourselves, because we are still largely using the same aesthetic tropes that we've used for hundreds and hundreds of years. The Ritu Kumar brand owes its genesis to the great textile heritage of this country. This country's entire history pretty much owes its heritage. And the most interesting thing is, you can go back almost 1,000, 1,500 years and look at textiles or particular art forms or aesthetics or ways of manipulating fabric, and still to some degree it's still prevalent today. So that could be plagiarism too, but that's just in the nature of our industry and our DNA and culture.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have no more questions. Over to you.
Schoolmaster's here.
Oh, there is.
Thank you all for the great discussion. I am not actually a fashion person. I am an environmentalist. So I think the discussion actually is cross-cutting with many issues that I am actually concerned about. I got the sense actually from the discussion that we are putting too much responsibility on the consumer. And actually, when we look at the last 2-3 decades on the global south, we see a global shift in the consumer behavior. We have turned into consumers in the global south. We used to be producers and also using our resources for the larger brands, major brands in the global west. Now we are turning into producer and also a consumer. And I don't see here any discussion about how could we change this? How could we change the consumer behavior? Now we are turning more into consumerism in the global south. Over the last 2 decades, I have seen in my country so many large malls that have so many larger brands, international brands that were not available before. I think this is well spread all over the global south now, right? So, and I can't blame the consumers. They are bombarded every day by ads that are forcing them to change their behavior and be consumers. And now we are asking them, oh, you need to be sustainable. Okay, what you have to do as a corporate, where is the corporate responsibility here? I didn't hear about this. We put most of the blame on the consumers. I think consumers has a role. Education, of course, I am in academia, so I know the role of education, particularly in environmental issues, and how it makes difference, particularly at decision-making level. So education would do difference, but it's gonna take a long time to see the outcome of this, okay? And it would actually make a difference at a certain level, not at all different levels of society, right? So if we are asking people to be sustainable, we have to provide them with alternatives, okay? And now we are talking about, okay, in the global south, there are some communities that are relying on these industries for their livelihood. Okay, what should we do for them, right? Now, what should the corporate do in terms of responsibility to reduce this, I would say, the attack on the consumer, to turn into a consumerism lifestyle, okay? The other thing is, would we see something like what we have seen in the cigarette industry, for example, some warning from the larger brand? I'm talking about the larger brand because they are the most effective and the most polluting. And I was actually astonished by what you have mentioned, that in the cup, they would do a large pressure on the global south. All right. So I think it's not fair to do a pressure on the global south, right? Thank you so much.
I think this was one of the things that I actually started with, the fact that it's not what we want, but what we are sold as consumers. And this is one debate that I always have. And I want to thank you, first of all, for bringing this, because the whole debate of production versus consumption, in my opinion, I always feel that they both play equal parts, but largely production plays the larger part because it's also got marketing, advertising budgets, and the large corporations are the ones that are selling us the idea of this. So conscious consumerism is across everywhere globally right now. So from the idea of consumer is king to the fact that consumer wants this, so we're producing it. We're forgetting the catalyst, that's advertising and marketing. That's people are creating anything right now and selling it, right? It's just advertising. That's what sales and marketing is entirely. You can sell anything out of it. I can sell you my phone, this pencil, if I was a salesperson. So going back to the whole concept that we've all discussed, it's also about legislation, the policy frameworks that are there, having, I think that's what the whole panel is, having technology being part of it. There are brands right now that are putting buttons, designer brands, maybe Karishma, you know about it, who are putting RFID tags on your button so you can scan it and know the entire story of your garment. So, you know, sustainability and transparency is right there on your phone. So that's how connected it is. So activism, that's why it's also important. Advocacy is important. So all of them play an equal role in it. But yes, the debate of production versus consumption is a never-ending one.
I think to add to that as well, I think it's a great question, and it's something that I keep on researching so much about, the psychology behind a consumer. And I think in some of Sustaina's events as well, like there was an event that we hosted called Labyrinth, and we really try to dive into this whole idea that when you're positioning a sustainable brand and how you're positioning it is really important. If supposing you're saying buy a product because you need to be responsible to the planet, then that also sets a kind of obligation to the consumer, and then the consumer starts thinking, oh, you know, I'm obligated to buy your clothes. It should come out of some form of love that kind of I think I would equate that to, again, something that we were talking about as self-identity and like this whole idea of personal style as well, which is one aspect, but there are different aspects of consumer behavior. It really dives, we need to do a lot of research into the nudges and incentivization like you talked about. I think another interesting fact, something I'm really talking out loud, is also really dependent upon this whole idea of community that a sustainable brand can create, because you're also looking at mending processes where the consumer can also be involved. That also kinds of creates a sense of interesting relationship between a business and a consumer itself. Now, as we all know, we're living in a digital age. That basically means that the idea of social cohesion is reducing day by day, right? We're always on our phones. Whenever we go to restaurants, now I think in the UK it's pretty much out there that there are no waiters exactly. There's no one who you can have a conversation with while you're ordering food and everything like that, right? It's becoming all AI driven, and there are bots that you have to order your food online, right? But what a sustainable brand, I think in this case, can really give a consumer is this whole idea of a community, of a relationship that can be established between a business and a consumer. I think it's the most beautiful things out there in the world today. And I think that if we really work on that, on these different aspects of positive reinforcement and incentivization, I think that can perhaps help as well in terms of changing consumer behavior, where consumers don't look at it as a responsibility, but as something that they're proud of as well. So yeah.
I just want to say one thing. Over here is it's also the responsibility of designers. It's also my job, and we educate the consumer by putting in, a technology like she's talking about, by handwriting, the names of the people who've made it, what is the process, how has it been made. But when we mentioned the thing earlier to him about it's also the consumer's responsibility to, if he's throwing something into the garbage can or throwing it away, that disposal still comes down to you or the person who has the product, right? But at no point of time do I ever stand here and say that it's only your job and not my job. As the maker of the product, because I am making a product that you will consume, it's my job to not overproduce, to not oversell it to you, to make a product that's going to last you so long that you can wear it for really, really long, to provide you the service of mend and repair. So I think it's a two-way thing. So it's also my job to educate you, and that's what we try to do also as businesses sitting over here right now.
Hopefully all the brands will do the same thing.
Sorry?
I'm saying hopefully all the brands
Yes.
will do the same
Yeah,
thing.
and that's the thing. This is the starting of this conversation. This is a new conversation for a lot of people over here.
But can I just say, I don't think it's a question of blame at all. I don't think it's a question of the consumer or the producer, unless we're talking about the demise of capitalism. This is not a practical way of looking at it, because that's just the nature of the world that we live in. To your question, what do we need to do? That, there are checks and balances that are required for capitalism. I mean, we do need to, in order to make change, the people who have to make change have to educate people that what you're doing is not correct, like what the alcohol lobby does, or goods that are not good for you. And that's what has to happen. Education has to be deep. It has to start in schools. It has to be everywhere, that what we are doing to our planet is not sustainable. And therefore, consumer behavior will change. And if consumer behavior changes, producers will change, and so on and so forth. To Ishani's very evocative point about creating brands that have an ethos of sustainability, that's great, but I promise you most of those brands are doing it to get more dollars in their pockets. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it has to be, it's capitalism, guys. I mean, we need to have checks and balances on that. Sorry for being the cynic.
No, that's the harsh reality, which is why we said that it is such a difficult terrain to be able to navigate in terms of being able to do justice to all the various aspects. And we thought that this was going to be a subject that we were going to just like finish off and, move onwards with. So there you go, how wrong we were.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Trendspotting is all about. That, every topic ends up being suddenly more important than you thought when you began the discussion, right? And that's, thank you to the panel. Thank you, Vidyan. Thank you, Mankaran, Amrish, Karishma, and Ishani. Right, thank you for being here, and thank you all for being part of the audience. And the idea behind Trendspotting was exactly what you've seen today, right? The idea was, we thought, by the way, of a name called Fashionable instead of Trendspotting. Thank God we picked Trendspotting, right? Much better name, right? And it would be terrible to have fashion and fashionable on the same, kind of screen behind me. But, keeping that facetious remark aside, what Trendspotting is all about is recognizing that there are certain things that matter, and that in today's day and age, certain things matter quite a lot, right? And something like fashion, which even the panelists, when I spoke with them and we were putting the panel together, I don't think you realized how important your role in the world today is, right, on it. And I think that's what Trendspotting is about recognizing that certain things matter, right? And those things that matter don't have simple answers. And they don't even have simple questions, leave alone simple answers, right, on it. And what Trendspotting is trying to do is trying to explore that space of the gray, fuzzy area about things that really matter and that need to be explored, right? So to just give you a sense of what Trendspotting is, it's not just a panel discussion, right? What goes with it is an annotated bibliography which actually has some of the data and research that has been done in the area, right, on it. It's not a research paper, it's an annotated bibliography. So what we try and do is say, and that's available on the web page where you can look at this every Trendspotting lecture. So if you want to read more about what has been researched, what is the data out there, what is going on, there's an annotated bibliography to guide you there, right? You've then got a discussion with people who really know what they're talking about and who discover in their conversation with all of you that, hey, look, it's pretty nuanced, right? And then at the end of the day is the reflection and the comments that come when the video gets uploaded and we get feedback on that, right? And so Trendspotting is trying to create a space, right? And what you've just experienced is one part of that space. So be part of the journey. 19th March is the next one. It's a pretty interesting topic because it's linking the past with the present. It's talking about living heritage, right? And that's going to be an interesting topic, 19th of March. See you there. Thank you for being here tonight. Good
Now
night.
that's a marketing plug that I approve. Thank you.